I ignored my destiny once. I cannot do that again. Even for you.
Hey guys, you know what I'm really loving about the MCU in the last couple years? Since we've gotten to phase 3 of the MCU, a lot of the villains have had far more depth of character than we've ever seen before. And in 2017, the MCU introduced us to Thanos. Well, technically, they introduced us to Thanos back in 2012, but he's had a couple, facelifts since then. But in Avengers Infinity War, we're finally seeing Thanos in the flesh. And Thanos is a man with a plan. He is not a evil villain as we usually get in the MCU. He's not one-dimensional. He is actually, in his own mind, a hero who is trying to save the universe from an impending crisis of overpopulation. But Thanos' plan actually would never, ever work. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode of Constant Review. If the movies of the MCU fall to one trope way too many times, it's that we see constantly in movie after movie the same trope over and over where the superhero and the supervillain have the exact same powers. We see it first in Iron Man 1, and then it comes up again in Captain America, Captain America Winter Soldier, Iron Man 2, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's why it's such a breath of fresh air when we finally come across a villain that is one, not just the same as the hero, but two, actually has multiple dimensions. We see a very common trend in these movies that villains do not have any character to them except for being evil. And this innately makes them really, really boring. But when we get to Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, we finally come across a villain that actually is understandable in his motives. Thanos is a very weird villain for the MCU because in Thanos' own mind, he's not a villain at all.
You're not the only one cursed with knowledge. I ignored my destiny once. I cannot do that again. Even for you.
In fact, even at the end of the movie ends with the phrase, Thanos will return, flashing across the screen. And throughout the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the character will return line has been used exclusively for the heroes. And this is the first and only time where that line has been given to the villain. So there's a level of doubt as to whether this movie is even trying to portray that Thanos is actually the hero in this movie. He's definitely the character that gets the most screen time. But Thanos' plan is fundamentally so flawed. So for you guys who don't fully remember what it was, let me go through it really quickly. And my apologies to everyone out there who have it memorized and don't need the quick refresher. From his experience back on his homeworld of Titan, Thanos experienced an apocalyptic event. On the planet of Titan, everyone ended up dying due to overpopulation. The population of the planet exceeded the carrying capacity of the planet, and therefore the planet could no longer survive, causing everyone to eventually die out. When this happened, and Thanos could see it coming, Thanos proposed a solution to the people of Titan. And his solution was genocide. They would kill off randomly 50% of their population so that they would no longer be overcome by their demand for resources and that the population could survive. However, Thanos fails at convincing anyone on Titan, and because of this, the entire population dies out. So, burdened by his previous failings and seeing this have happened to his home, Thanos goes on a quest to never let this happen to any other planet in the universe, and therefore commits himself to traveling across the galaxy and wiping out 50% of every alien population he encounters, until in the end, he will wipe out 50% of the population of the entire universe. And on the face of it, this isn't as far fetched as you might think. In fact, there was a time when economists really feared that the biggest threat to the world was overpopulation. Since we've hit such a long period of prosperity where there are no wars and science has gotten to the point where humans live a lot longer, the human population just keeps going up every single year. And there's an inevitable point to which the human population will exceed the carrying capacity, at which point starvation will inevitably occur, resulting in increased violence, increased crime rates, and possibly a global catastrophe. So, on the face of it, Thanos seems like he has a really good point. But the second we start digging into it a little bit further, the cracks in his plan are very evident. And the fundamental issue with this plan, beyond anything else, is the fact that population growth is not linear, it's exponential. What that basically means is that it does not grow by a fixed amount every year, but instead it grows more and more based off of what it previously was. And so snapping away 50% of the population sounds good on paper, and seems like it would take us back to what, the Middle Ages, the 1600s, maybe the 1800s? Nope! It would take us back to the 1970s, which is the last time the world's population was around 3.7 billion, roughly half of what it is today. Which, if we assume that Thanos believes that we are currently at or approaching the carrying capacity of the planet and we are running out of resources today, snapping us back 50 years will just mean he's going to need to find a new set of Infinity Stones in the next 50 years and keep doing this over and over again.
To the garden. That's cute. Thanos has a retirement plan.
And more than that, in every single period of history, after a massive wipeout of the population, like a world war, it's always followed up by rapid population expansion. You guys probably all know about a group of people referred to as the baby boomers, right? The baby boomers were a group of babies born to make up for the huge drop in population that occurred during World War II. Because of that, there's a huge disproportionate surge of new people that were born in the years after the war. So if Thanos caused a mass extinction event that caused 50% of the population to disappear, sure, that would work temporarily, but immediately after, based off everything we've seen in history, people would start reproducing right away, and there would be a huge surge in new baby. Like the snap boomers or something like that. We can come up with a pithy name for them. That would inevitably mean that it wouldn't even take 50 years to get the population back to where it is. It would probably take closer to 25. You ever have those moments when you're sitting in class or you've had a question coming up and everyone says a different answer than the one you had in your head, and in your head you're laughing at them or thinking that, they're all wrong and they're so much dumber than you because you're the one who's actually right, until after a few moments you have some time to think about it and you realize that you were wrong the whole time and it's really lucky that you didn't speak up? Bet that's how Thanos feels when someone explains basic demographics to him. Thanos is walking around acting as if the only reason the population of Titan died out was because no one listened to his plan. But there's literally no evidence to support the idea that if they followed his plan, they would have all survived. In fact, if you think about it, it's much more likely that the reason why they ignored his plan was because it made no sense. In fact, if you look at the predictions for the way the population is growing in the upcoming years, we can actually see that the average population growth per year is currently decreasing year over year. If you look at the predictions online, that can show you exactly what it's expected to reach in the next 30 years. We're not even expected to reach 10 billion by then, which means we still won't hit the current carrying capacity of the world. So, suck on that, Thanos. It looks like we were never going to hit that overpopulation limit that you were so afraid of. But let's give Thanos the benefit of the doubt and say that the MCU is not the real universe. The Marvel Cinematic World is actually going to hit a point where overpopulation would cause an extinction level event. So in that hypothetical world, Thanos would be justified in eradicating 50% of the population, right? And the answer is still no! Because there are huge side effects to wiping out a significant portion of the population. I'm sure in 2017, when the writers were coming up with this movie and were producing it, didn't have any concept of what would actually happen if a significant portion of the population were to disappear overnight. But now in 2020, with the current crisis in world climate going on, we can see exactly what would happen if even 1/10 of the percentage that Thanos was trying to snap away ended up actually dying. And it is catastrophic to more than just the population, but the entire world. Anyone who's worked for a company, whether it's a large business or a small business, has seen situations where individuals have very specialized knowledge. And if they were to quit or be fired, the company would lose a lot of specialized information and not be able to directly replace them. And that's what would happen on a global scale if 50% of the population disappeared. Companies would be in disarray, supply chains would stop working. The systems we rely on, from farmers to transportation, just to bring food to our grocery stores, would be completely decimated and in shambles. We would struggle as a population to just be able to feed ourselves in this apocalyptic wasteland that Thanos has left us in. And we can see that this is exactly what happens in Marvel's Avengers Endgame, because 5 years after the snap has happened, we see that the economy has basically stopped. The harbors are full with boats, entire communities are being turned into ghost towns, and society itself is struggling to survive. And does Thanos realize this? Does Thanos know that this is what happens after he does this to a planet? And the answer is no. According to Thanos, after he did this to Gamora's home world, the population thrived and everyone was happy.
Do you know what's happened since then? The children born have known nothing but full bellies and clear skies. It's a paradise.
But from what we see happen to Earth, from what we see happened to the people who are left behind, the population doesn't appear to be thriving. And from what we hear from Captain Marvel when she comes in the Skype call to update the Avengers, it appears that the entire universe has been thrown into disarray.
Covering a lot of territory. The things that are happening on Earth are happening everywhere, on thousands of planets.
In fact, the best guess as to what's happening is that Thanos only believes that his plan works, and he believes it so confidently that he's not going back to check after the fact to see how the population is doing. It's just him and his group of loyal children and devoted followers that are blindly trudging down this path, expecting it to lead good results. And if we go look very closely at a minute detail in Guardians of the Galaxy, it basically proves this point. Though Thanos says in Avengers Infinity War that doing this has saved Gamora's people and that they are thriving, we find out in the shot after Gamora is arrested that her people have been wiped out. They are now extinct, and she is the sole survivor of her race. Now, you say, this could just be a production error or just a mistake, but I don't think it is. I think Thanos' plan has inadvertently led to the complete extinction of her people, and his plan is not even working in the MCU. So guys, there you have it. Thanos' plan to kill 50% of the universe's population would not in fact save the universe at all, and if anything would make the problem so much worse. Do you guys agree? Or do you think Thanos still could have been right? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!